This is the Almost Timely newsletter for the week of June 2nd, 2024. Content authenticity statement: 100% of this week's newsletter was generated by me, the human. Though the walkthrough the video that we're going to do is going to show the use of generative AI to make the LinkedIn guide, which is like 89% AI generated. There's a link at the top of the newsletter to learn why this kind of disclosure is a good idea and might be required for anyone doing business in any capacity with the EU in the near future. What's on my mind this week? Generative AI and the synthesis use case category. This week, let's talk about the seventh major use case category for generative AI, especially with regard to large language models, the things that power tools like ChatGPT. I've talked extensively in my keynotes, workshops, webinars, and pretty much all the time about the six major use cases, which is generation, making new data, net new data, typically in the form of language or images; extraction, taking data out of other data, like extracting tables from a PDF; summarization, take big data, make it small data; rewriting, turning data from one form to another, like translation; classification, organizing and categorizing our data, like sentiment analysis; and question answering, give a tool a bunch of data, ask questions about it. The seventh category, which is a blend of the several of the tasks above, but is, I think, distinct enough that it merits a call out, is synthesis. This is mashing data together to form something new. Why is this different? If we look at the use cases we've just talked about, all of them except generation are about taking existing data in one form or another and getting a smaller version of that data out, right? Summarization makes it smaller, rewriting might make it smaller, extraction makes it smaller, etc. None of these things are about making data bigger, putting data together, and that's what synthesis is. What does synthesis look like? Let's go to a specific, tangible use case. My friend Amber Naslund works for LinkedIn and has been asked a bazillion times how LinkedIn's algorithm works, why a post did or didn't appear, etc. Her her inbox, her DMs is overflowing with all these questions people have, which is really funny when you think about it, because it's like Amber works in sales leadership, not machine learning, not data science, not AI. She is not the right person to ask these questions of, and she has said so very publicly, very frequently. Yet people keep asking her. Um, it's like going to McDonald's and asking the manager, about McDonald's corporate social media strategy. Like, no, that person has no responsibility for that. However, LinkedIn itself has told us how the algorithm works at length, like at a significant length. LinkedIn has an engineering block, which engineers, the people who actually build the LinkedIn algorithm, uh, document the technologies, the algorithms, the techniques, the code, and the tools they use to create the LinkedIn algorithm. I use that as a shorthand, but there isn't a LinkedIn algorithm. There's like 15 different systems all bonded together. From how the LinkedIn graph is distributed across more than a dozen servers globally in real time, which is a ridiculous feat of engineering itself, to how the feed decides to show you what, the engineers have told us how it works. So why all these people on LinkedIn like, hey, if you comment on this post right now, I'll sell you my secret LinkedIn hacks guide. And why don't marketers and sales professionals know this? Why don't marketers and sales professionals know how LinkedIn actually works? Because engineers being engineers, they told us in engineering speak. And they've told us across dozens of blog posts, interviews, articles, podcasts, videos that are all around the web. They didn't serve it up to us on a silver platter in terms of non-technical marketer understand, and they're under no obligation to do so. That's not their job. Their job is to build tech, not explain it to the general public. Until the advent of large language models, that meant very technical documents were simply out of reach for the average non-technical marketer. But with large language models, especially those that have enormous short-term memories, context windows, like Google Gemini 1.5, Anthropic Claude Opus 3, we suddenly have the tools to translate technical jargon into terms we can understand and take action on. But to do that, we need to play digital detective. We need to find all these pieces, gather them in one place, and synthesize them, glue them together, put all the pieces together, in the lid of the box, the jigsaw puzzle, and sort them so we can do tasks like question answering and summarization. So let's go ahead and do that today. I strongly recommend that you watch the video version. If you're listening to this, go watch the video version on YouTube. So we're gonna do this process step by step. First, I'm gonna use Gemini 1.5. I'm using the Pro version here within Google's AI Studio. And as always, I turn all the safeties off because I like to live dangerously. Uh, so not what that button actually does. Um, we need to go find all this content. So let's go to the engineering blog on LinkedIn. Take a look around. Right. Not every post is relevant to how the algorithm works, but we want to identify posts that talk about content in any capacity, right? Now, there's matching LinkedIn members, group anatomy, and so on and so forth, popular topics. Uh, we want to identify blog posts that talk about content in any capacity, from serving it up quickly to sorting it to preventing abuse and spam. Any post talking about content may have clues in it about how that would be useful. So let's take a look, for example, at this one here. How LinkedIn's platform strategy helps us innovate with strategy, speed, and scale in the AI moment. Scroll through this real quick. We've got Azure AI services, universal content filtering, the Gen AI gateway. Okay, there might be a few interesting things here. What's the universal content filtering thing? Oh, this is content filtering, keeping inappropriate content off our sites. That's something we're going to want to incorporate. I have gone ahead for the sake of demonstration and downloaded about 70 of these things. Next, we want to hit the broader web with an AI enabled search engine like Bing or Perplexity, or even regular Google, but something that can interpret large and complicated queries. We want to ask the search engine. Let's go over to Perplexity. Find interviews with LinkedIn engineers about the technical aspects of the LinkedIn algorithm. Restrict your results to only official LinkedIn employees. Include podcasts, YouTube videos, etc. Let's see what Perplexity comes up with. The Redefining Work LinkedIn podcast. What other sources we have here? Common outgroup interview techniques, algorithmic interviews. No, none of those are a really great fit. However, let's go ask our friend Google. Tim Yurka, I think that's how it pronounces his name, is LinkedIn's VP of engineering. Holistic optimization of the LinkedIn news feed. That's a good one. I've listened to that one way before. We have Q&A with Tim Yurka here. We have what's this? LinkedIn shares insights into his latest social media algorithm. Let's see what that interview is kind of short. It probably would be a good fit. Entrepreneurs Problem Solvers podcast. Ooh, an interview with Tim there. Okay, that's useful. So again, I have gone ahead and downloaded all this stuff because you don't want to watch that. That's really boring. But we want to take these resources, we want to convert them into text format using AI transcription software if there's not captions or anything provided. By the way, there's a great utility called YTDLP, which is great for gathering captions from YouTube in particular. Now, what we don't want third-party opinions. Everyone and their cousin has their opinion, usually uninformed, about what they think LinkedIn is doing behind the scenes. So we want to exclude any kind of that content from our work. We just want to focus on the official stuff. And finally, our last stop is going to be go to archive.org. So this is the Cornell University's academic papers. Let's go ahead and put in LinkedIn here. Ooh, improved content understanding with effective use of multi task contrastive learning, neural optimization with adaptive heuristics, retrieval augmented generation with knowledge graphs. And so what we want to go through is grab any papers that are relevant to content. You can see here on screen where the authors are from LinkedIn. So that's really important. The authors have to be from LinkedIn. So now let's go over to our Gemini system. I'm going to put in, I pre baked these prompts. This is like a cooking show. Uh, our first prompt is we're going to do some synthesis and investigation. Your first task today will be to synthesize a unified framework based on a large corpus of documents I'll provide. I'll provide interviews, academic papers, and articles. What do you know about best practices for this? So this is following the Trust Insights Pair framework, which you can go and grab for free at trustinsights.ai/power questions. Now, what we're doing is we're priming the model. We want to prime the model to sort of understand what it should be looking at, what it should be thinking about. Next, let's get all the documents in. So I've got a gargantuan prompt here that says, I'm going to provide you with the document archive. The subject of our investigation today is the LinkedIn algorithm, specifically the newsfeed algorithm. I'm going to provide you with interviews, blah, blah, blah. This is the format that I want you to return. And now we will go to upload, and let's go ahead and fetch out all of the crazy amount of stuff that LinkedIn has published over the years. Let's see, LinkedIn blog posts, the Tim Yurka article, and drag all of this in. All right, so it has loaded up all of these papers. We are at 352,000 tokens already. So we are 1/3 of the way through Gemini's memory. 352,000 tokens is like 275,000 words. For context, this book here, Anne Hanley's Everybody Writes, this is like 75,000 words. So we are talking like 3 of these we are loading in as our prompt. So let's go ahead and hit run and have it do our analysis. Okay, 2 minutes later, we have the LinkedIn newsfeed algorithm outline. This contains 13 different parts of the LinkedIn algorithm. So this is there's a lot. Like I said, there's a lot of pieces to this system, and so we can now see all those different pieces, including a brief explanation of what they are. But this is also very technical. So what we want to do next is ask Gemini. Okay, if I give LinkedIn a piece of content, if I push send or pub or post, I guess, what happens? Outline the steps. So we're going to go ahead and have it think through all of this documentation now, and we're making the transition from pure analysis, which is just the, hey, what's in the documents, starting to have it flow towards here's what to do about it. And we're doing this in stages for a very specific reason. If you try to jump straight to recommendations, what happens with language models a lot is that they, particularly for this amount of data, they kind of lose their way. They kind of just sort of summarize and squash everything down. We don't want that. We don't want compressed information. We want verbose. We want it to foam at the mouth for a while. So giving it the opportunity to first explore the huge data set in one shot, then start to organize it chronologically, mentally, right? Well, it doesn't have a brain, but if it did have a brain, to be organizing it chronologically, and then from there, we can have it start building guides. We don't want to go straight to guides first because there's a lot of little details that we want it to remember that it knows. These tools, I often say this, these tools are like the world's smartest, most forgetful interns. Right? They got 255 PhDs, they got a PhD in everything, but they're still interns and they're forgetful. They forget things. And granted, if you and I were having this conversation, you know, we speak at what, about 150 words a minute. Um, so if you take 150 words a minute and we've got 270,000 words, we have 1,800 minutes of conversation so far. So we've been talking for 30 hours. If I asked you to remember something you said in hour one, at hour 30, assuming, we hadn't, assuming we hadn't eaten or slept, you wouldn't remember. So it's not surprising that the generative AI system is forgetful. I'd be forgetful too. So we've now got this nice sequence of what happens next. We're going to ask the Gemini model, great, let's start building out our action plan. And we're going to specify, hey, this action plan should be for marketers. It should be non-technical. We don't need advanced explanations of things like XGBoost and Kafka, because that's not going to help a marketer. That would help an engineer 100%, but a marketer, not so much. Okay, so it's gone through and it said, okay, here's your LinkedIn marketing plan. Before you post, lay the foundation, build a good profile, grow your network, make engaging content. These are all the basics, right? This is the basic stuff, but this is the basic stuff derived from the documentation. So the documentation supports many of these basic best practices. Now, suppose we're already doing the basics. Suppose we've got a decent profile. We've done all the basic stuff. What could we do to get a more, I guess, more advanced plan, more maybe an intermediate plan? I'm going to go ahead and specify I want exactly that. Build me a new plan that isn't just the basics. So I'll go to put the existing basics in and say, make me an intermediate plan that does not incorporate the basics. Okay, now a minute later, we've got an intermediate plan. So now we're prioritizing high value connections, communities around shared interests, et cetera, building some evergreen content. That's not bad. I think that's a good intermediate plan. So now let's take it to the logical extreme and incorporate the beginning and intermediate stuff and say, build now the advanced plan. Build a plan that is super advanced, that we already know the basics. We already know the intermediate. We're doing all the things that we should be doing. Build the big plan. Okay, so we've now got our advanced plan that contains all of the big, heavy chunks of stuff from LinkedIn's algorithm. So what we've done, this synthesis, right? We gathered up all the information. We asked the model to synthesize, to glue all the stuff together, discard the irrelevant stuff, create a single unified framework that has all the knowledge that we know of, that's been available from LinkedIn that we were prompted to provide. And you'll notice in the prompts where I wrote down, be sure to use only the uploaded data, because these models have consumed the internet and they've consumed all the AI gurus and the LinkedIn gurus and all their stuff. We don't want any of that. We want to restrict it to credible sources. We converted the framework into a protocol, a series of guides that we can deliver to our social media marketing teams. We can hand off to the people who work for us and doing social media marketing, doing LinkedIn marketing, and say, here is the blueprint. Here's the plan for making the most of this stuff. Right? This set of practices anyone can use, right? Because we went basic, beginner, intermediate, and advanced. So there's something in there for everyone. And so much so that after I was done with it, I said, okay, let's turn this into an actual guide. So if you want the output from this, we're gonna have a download for you. This is the power of synthesis, right? Why is this so important? If you've ever worked with large language models and you've had it hallucinate, meaning invent something that wasn't true, it's because the model is drawing from its long-term memory, from the training data, which includes, the randos and the gurus and all that stuff. Some of the information in the training data is crap. Right? It's patently false stuff. Some things that we're asking the model just might not know. So in an effort to be helpful and follow our instructions, the model is going to return the closest matches in its knowledge, which are statistically correct, but factually wrong. Right? In the case of LinkedIn, the LinkedIn synthesis, there are a lot of people who have a lot of opinions about how LinkedIn works, and very few of them are LinkedIn engineers. And if we want to reduce hallucinations, both from an absence of data as well as bad data, we need to bring our own data to the party, like we did with all of these documents. We've brought our own stuff. Here's the rule of thumb when it comes to this stuff. The more data you bring, the less likely the model is to invent stuff, make things up, the less likely it is to hallucinate. The more you bring, the less it hallucinates, because now it's not trying to do generation. Now it's just doing summarization. Synthesis glues it all together, and then summarization boils it down. We have, from all this synthesis experiment, we have a working guide for how to market on LinkedIn, how to get your stuff seen in the news feed, to take advantage of the information provided to us by the engineering department. If you want a PDF copy of the guide, I've got a link in the newsletter. You can download it from the website in exchange for a form fill. Yes, I'm going to make you fill out a form. But I would encourage you to also try out the process we just walked through for yourself, so you can see firsthand how synthesis works. And no matter what, you can safely stop asking Amber how LinkedIn works now. You've got the guide. And so now we have, instead of 6 use case categories, now we have the magnificent 7, the 7 samurai of generative AI: generation, extraction, summarization, rewriting, classification, question answering, and synthesis. Welcome to the party, Synthesis. Nice to have you here. All right, what else happened this week? On the Trust Insights live stream, we did the same sort of synthesis exercise with that big Google leak. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, Google's API documentation for their content warehouse that powers, among other things, Google search was leaked. And it's 2,500 pages of text, so over 1 million words. And a lot of people are deconstructing it to find SEO insights. We did that on the live stream live with generative AI to boil down just the crazy amount of information there and come up with again, another actionable set of protocols. So go check out the live stream. And then in the Analytics for Marketers Slack group, there is the PDF that you can grab for that. So if you're not a member of that, here's the URL, trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. Other things that happened this week. I did a post on what makes events valuable, things that AI can't summarize, how long your chat GPT prompts should be. Here's a hint, longer is better. What else happened this week? Let's talk about jobs. We have Amplitude Enablement Specialist at DMPG, Analytics Engineer at Peak Design, Analytics Lead at Further, Associate Analytics Architect for Telium at Further, Client Enablement Lead, Client Enablement Specialist, CRO Personalization Solution Architecture, and all of these at DMPG, Digital Experience Specialist at Impression Digital, Director of Global Data Engineering at iHerb, Marketing Data Analyst at Soldo, Marketing Technology Specialist at Impression Digital, Senior Director of Business Development at Further, Senior Growth Manager at Impression Digital, Senior Marketing Technology Specialist at Impression Digital, Solutions Architect at Snowplow, and Senior Designer at Amplitude. Whew, a lot of hiring there, which is good because the marketing sector as a whole needs it. Upcoming events, for sure, I will be in Cleveland for MAYCON in September, Trace One in Miami also in September, Marketing Plus B2B Forum in here in Boston in November. But there's other stuff cooking. There's a non-zero possibility that I will be at an event in July possibly in Salt Lake City, and a few other things that are there's like a lot going on. So stay tuned. That is going to do it for this week's newsletter. I hope that you found the process of synthesis useful. I hope you try it on things on your own stuff, synthesizing answers from your own content. And I hope you enjoy the unofficial LinkedIn algorithm guide for marketers. Download that, give it a shot, see how it goes. And I want to hear how it goes. I want to hear if there's anything there that you actually learned that was net new to you, or if it was like, yeah, we knew that. Like, make great content, talk to people. I mean, that's what's in the basic protocol. There's a reason for that. That's what actually works. I will talk to you next time. Thanks for tuning in. See you soon. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And if you want to know when new videos are available, hit the bell button to be notified as soon as new content is live.